Have you ever looked at a company that seems to be doing great, but then it just collapses? It's confusing, right? Well, today we're diving into the one financial document that helps you see what's really going on, the cash flow statement. It might sound a bit technical, but trust me, think of it as a financial detective story. And by the end of this, you'll know exactly how to read all the clues. So let's kick things off with a real-world mystery. I want to take you back to the dot-com bubble around the year 2000. There was this online fashion retailer called Boo.com. They were one of the hottest, most hyped-up startups in Europe. But pretty soon, they were making headlines for all the wrong reasons when they went bust in a really spectacular way. And here's the puzzle, the part that confuses everyone. If you just looked at the surface, things looked pretty good. Sales were going up, the brand was getting bigger, and they had tons of media attention. But behind the curtain, the company was just burning through money. It was spending cash way, way faster than it was bringing it in. Which brings us to the big central question for today. How is that even possible? How can a company look successful, have customers, have sales, and go bankrupt at the same exact time? Well, the answer is all about understanding the huge difference between making a profit and actually having cash in the bank. This leads us right into something I like to call the profitability trap. It's this super common and sometimes totally fatal mistake of thinking that as long as a company is profitable, everything's fine. But as Boo.com found out the hard way, that's not even close to the whole story. You know, there's a saying in the world of finance that just nails this. Profit is an opinion, but cash is a fact. Think about it. Profit is, in a way, just an accounting idea. It can be shaped and molded by different rules about when you recognize a sale or how you value your inventory. But cash? Cash is dead simple. It's the actual money sitting in your bank account that you need to pay your bills, pay your people, and, keep the lights on. Okay, so if profit can be a little misleading, how do we get to the actual truth? This is where our detective's tool comes in, the cash flow statement. This is the document that just cuts through all the accounting jargon and shows you exactly what happened with the cold, hard cash. A cash flow statement does exactly what it says on the tin. It tracks the movement of cash. It shows you where all the money came from, the inflows, and everywhere it went, the outflows. No opinions, just facts. This is the exact document that would have been screaming that Boo.com was in deep trouble long before it actually went under. Now, the statement is neatly broken down into three main sections, and we're going to treat these as our three main clues in this investigation. First, you've got operating activities. That's the cash from the day-to-day business. Second is investing activities, the money being used to build for the future. And third, you have financing activities, where the money from investors and banks comes from. Let's break them down one by one. So our first and honestly our most important clue is cash from operations. This is the absolute heart of the business. It's the engine room. This section tells you if the company's main business, the thing it actually does, works. To put it simply, this part measures the cash coming in from selling the company's products or services, and then subtracts all the cash that went out to actually make and sell them. It is the purest sign of whether a company can generate cash all by itself. Let's make this really simple with a coffee shop. Every time you sell a cup of coffee, that's a positive cash flow from operations. Cha-ching! But paying for the coffee beans, the milk, your barista's salaries, and the rent for your shop, those are all negative cash flows from operations. The final number tells you if your coffee shop, at the end of the day, is actually bringing in more cash than it's spending. So the key here is that this section answers the most basic, fundamental question you can ask about any business. Forget sales numbers for a second, forget profit. Is the day-to-day grind actually generating real cash? If this number is negative and it stays negative, that is a huge flashing red flag. All right, let's move on to our second clue, cash from investing. This section is all about the company's big picture, its long-term game plan. It shows us how the company is spending money today to hopefully make more money tomorrow. So this part tracks cash used to buy or sell big long-term things. We're talking about new equipment, a new building, or even buying a whole other company. Now, a negative number here isn't always bad. In fact, it usually means the company is confident and is investing in its own growth. Let's go back to our little coffee shop. You decide to buy a brand new, super fancy espresso machine so you can serve customers faster. That's a cash outflow from investing. You buy a small van to start a delivery service, same thing. But hey, if you sell off some of your old tables and chairs, that's a cash inflow from investing. And that brings us to our third and final clue,
cash from financing. If our first clue tells us if the business model works, and the second tells us if the company is growing, this third clue tells us how it's all being paid for. This is where we see all the money flowing between the company and its backers, the people with the money. So this includes taking out loans from a bank, paying back debt, selling shares to new investors, or paying out dividends to the owners. For our coffee shop, getting that first loan from the bank to get started, that's a positive financing cash flow. But making those monthly loan payments back to the bank, that's a negative flow. And if you, the owner, decide to take some money out of the business for yourself as a dividend, that's also a cash outflow from financing. Okay, we've got our 3 clues, but the real magic, the real detective work happens when you put them all together, because they don't just give you 3 separate numbers. Together, they tell you a story about what a company is doing and where it is in its life. Look at this pattern right here. This tells the classic story of a startup. Cash from operations is negative, because it's still new and probably not profitable yet. Cash from investing is also negative, because it's buying all the stuff it needs to grow. And cash from financing? It's positive. And that's the key. All that spending is being funded by raising money from investors. This was the exact story of Boo.com. Now compare that to a healthy, established company. Look at the difference. Cash from operations is strongly positive. The main business is a money-making machine. It's using some of that cash to keep investing in the future, so that's still negative. But look at financing. It's also negative. This company is so successful, it's using its own profits to pay back its debts and give money back to its shareholders. It's funding itself. So now we can finally solve our mystery. Boo.com had those rising sales, sure, but its cash from operations was massively negative. It was burning through investor money so fast. And the minute that financing, that new money from investors dried up, it was over. Because the number one thing to remember is this: cash is the absolute lifeblood of any company. Without it, the heart just stops beating. And that leaves us with one last thought. Look, being profitable is great, it's important, but it's only one chapter of the story. So the next time you hear someone say a company is profitable, I want you to know the real, more important question you should be asking. That's cool, but are they actually generating cash?